this is Matt Welch from Spiritual Media Blog, and today I am here with Donald Harold Young, author of Finding God in Vegas. Donald, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Matt, for the opportunity. I've been looking forward to this as well and getting to know you a bit.
Yeah, one thing that I found really fascinating about your journey is you started out really focused more on material life and creating worldly success. You worked in pharmaceuticals, but then you've shifted more towards your spiritual journey and spiritual awakening. Tell us about that. How did that happen? How long has that happened? What has this process been like for you?
Sure. I'll give a little background on kind of how I fell into pharmaceutical marketing because I I think it's probably an area most people are not familiar with. I know when I was younger growing up, I never thought, fireman, policeman, but pharmaceutical marketing as a career with things. So anyway, I had finished school. I was living in Minneapolis at this time. I did not get into a PhD program that I wanted to. Student loans were coming through, so I got a job temping in a hospital,
Hmm.
filing a lot of paper. There was still a lot of paper back in the 90s compared to today. Um, and what that job led me to in terms of trying to find something else was this thing called continuing medical education. And basically, healthcare professionals need to get a certain number of credits, which makes sense. Medicine changes, there's new updates with things. So then I kind of entered this world of what I called CME or continuing medical education. And then eventually, what happened is I was working for a hospital. Then I started working for a for profit company. And then I started working for an agency that did communications for physicians. And then all of a sudden, like I find myself running a marketing advertising agency. All our clients were pharma clients.
Hmm.
We were the people responsible for those ads that you see all over TV and every channel where at the end everyone's happy and smiling, and I'm sure there's a puppy or two coming through the meadow because everything's been cured for that patient. So anyway, when I kind of got into that lifestyle, as I began making more and more money, and as I made more money, had more responsibility, I began to taste. I don't want to say the finer things in life because I think there's plenty of fine things that don't cost money anymore. But it was traveling first class. It was expensive steak and martini dinners. It was all that because I had put my faith in the material world. At that point, I was just like, I'm done with my spirituality. I'm not even sure there
Hmm.
is a God with things. And so, I just went and enjoyed the best that life had to offer with things. And, a career running a pharmaceutical marketing agency, you're paid pretty well. I'll just leave it at
Yeah, I bet.
that. So then what happened? You kind of asked how I got to this spiritual awakening. Um, Through a series of events, I lost my job. We made the move to Las Vegas. And I also began to kind of question a lot of the things that I had done with my life. It didn't help that I watched Dope Sick and Crime of the Century. And I was just like, okay, I really questioned what value did I add to the world in terms of marketing pharmaceutical drugs. I think pharma can do many wonderful things, but I'm not really sure the value with pharma marketing because we spend the most money on prescription drugs in the world, and we have horrible results with that. So, and at the end of the day, it's about making money. It's not health; it's about making money. And so I was just like, I can't go back to that anymore. And that's kind of what led to my spiritual awakening. Along with a few other things.
Wow. Well, good for you. I mean, I imagine that was a huge change in your lifestyle. So you're working this very successful, lucrative job, in pharmaceutical marketing, and then you switched to focus on more of a spiritual life. So, what does that look like? I mean, are you like how did you support yourself? What was how did your daily life change? I mean, what does that change look like on a daily basis?
Sure, sure. So, after I lost my first job in Chicago, I was laid off twice in my life, both in my 50s. Not a fun time to have that happen, but
Jeez.
I think it was for a reason at this point now. So we moved here after I lost my big, high-paying job, um, moved to Las Vegas, took another job with another company, but basically our clients were pharmaceutical marketers. Like I told you, I had that epiphany about what I did with my life. We were away from family and friends. I had just, like everyone else, experienced COVID and the craziness around that. No matter how you feel about any of the things that happened, it was a crazy time, and I think a lot of people reflected on life. Our cat that I loved so dearly passed away as well. So basically, everything that I thought and trusted in my life in terms of institutions in the material world um, just didn't make sense to me anymore. And so I thought, okay, when I was the happiest, it was when I was a camp counselor and feeling connected to God and spirituality. And so one evening I was by myself listening to Johnny Cash American
Hmm.
recordings, which if you've never listened to them, they're beautiful. As much secular as spiritual, I will say, but very lyrical about the life that we all lead. And I just broke down and cried, and I just thought, I can't chase these labels anymore. None of these labels make sense to me. The only label that makes sense is that I'm a child of God.
Hmm.
I'm okay with my imperfections. I'm okay with other people's imperfections. I know I cannot control everything in my life. So it was a huge shift because you imagine, I mean, my whole career was built about controlling things. Uh, so that's an insight in terms of what happened.
That's a huge shift. I mean, it sounds like it was like a complete 360. You went
Yeah,
from totally focused on material success and then to completely just like letting go and trusting God or the
yeah,
universe. Um, that's wonderful. And so, and it sounds like that happened about, you mentioned COVID time. So did this happen like 2 or 3 years ago or now four
yeah.
years ago?
2 years ago, this past February is when it happened. So
Okay.
it's been a very recent kind of spiritual awakening for me. It was after I had lost my second job as well. I was
Okay.
applying with other companies, thinking, well, I'll just go back into pharma. But I would just like, I just knew I couldn't. My heart was not in it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to trust God. I feel like writing this book is part of what I'm supposed to do. And, kind of launching my own spiritual way to create more love in the world.
That's fantastic. And so it sounds like you went from instead of following that money to following your passion of
Correct.
writing and pursuing these spiritual pursuits. Um, and so are you writing and working on your website full time now? Or are you involved in some other areas?
Yeah. So there were really two things that happened. One was obviously the website. So on the website, I do a blog every couple weeks. I do daily devotions. I post other writings. I'm in the process of trying to find an agent for my book. Um,
Great.
so we're working through kind of that. I'm working with a consultant on the plan. But the other thing that I changed in my life was I started doing a lot more, well, a lot more. I started doing volunteer work for
Yeah,
a couple organizations because I'm like, I can't just write about love. I mean, I think there's value in it and I think it helps other people. I know it helps me, but I have to find other ways to physically make a difference in the world as well. So I volunteer my time with a couple youth organizations as well. Um, and it just it helps you stay connected and realize how much love we are capable of generating so much love. It's crazy, but we put these boundaries in place around us, or we don't feel we have the time or the energy, but it's always there. It's just how we prioritize things.
Well, I really like how you talk about taking meaningful action because for some people, living a life of love is kind of like this, just doesn't mean a whole lot in a practical realm. But I really want to, acknowledge and commend some of your work because you're involved. I think I saw with CASA, like a
Yeah.
court-appointed special. Just tell us a little bit about that because that's not easy work. I mean,
Right.
what are you doing with that? That's pretty
Right.
interesting.
Right. So one of the organizations that I decided to volunteer with is called CASA. It's a court-appointed special advocate. It's a
Yeah.
national program. There's chapters in probably almost every state. But what it does is you're basically a mentor. You're appointed by the court, but you're to advocate for the foster child who's, either in a facility or in a foster home as well, as their family is trying to get their lives back together. And so, I mean, these are incredibly heartbreaking stories, as you can imagine, but but there's but there's so much hope that can come out of it. And uh, it's funny, when I the work that I do, my kid is very appreciative, but I don't think that the kid realizes how much they are fulfilling me in terms of it's a joy to give. Like it is a joy to give, and when you have that mindset, yeah, I mean, I look forward to our time together all the time, and giving these kids hope it's the most important thing you can do.
That's really special. And I I actually used to work as a trial attorney for Department of Child Services. So I would work with CASA and it's an extremely difficult environment, but you're
Yeah.
right, you're capable of doing a lot of good for those children. So that's pretty impressive that you don't just talk the talk of love, you walk the walk and are actually really making a difference in these kids' lives. Um, and you mentioned also taking time for writing. And so tell us about your memoir. First of all, if I remember correctly, the full title is Finding God in Vegas, and then it's Reimagining the American Dream. Did I get that
Yeah.
right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, great. So that's one of that title really caught my attention. So reimagining well, tell us about both of those things. Finding
Okay.
God in Vegas, and then also tell us reimagining the American Dream. What do those titles mean to you?
Sure, sure. So the first one, in terms of finding God in Vegas, I mean, on one level, it's like I moved to Vegas and that's when my spiritual awakening happened. You don't think of Vegas and spiritual awakening with the same context, but it is what it is. But for me, what triggered also that title was, near our house, there's kind of two landmarks that I pass by on a frequent basis when I have to go to Wally Mart, as I call it. One is the Animal Emergency Center, where I had to say goodbye to our beloved cat. And that was, for me, the most painful thing that I had ever gone through. And I know it's true for so many, many people. So my love goes out to that. And then the second one was, there's a funeral home, and sometimes you'll see smoke that comes out. And you're like, but it's not really smoke, because there was a person there, right? There is crematorium as well. And so at 57, you're like, wow, like you're closer to the smoke than you were
Hmm.
20 years ago, so to speak, with that. And so I thought to myself, I know God was with me when I said goodbye to my cat. I know God is with us as we leave this world. So of course God is in Vegas. So that was kind of the other piece with it, and coming up with the title. And then this thought about reimagining the American dream. I mean, for me, part of my spiritual awakening was just, I feel like I put false faith in a lot of man-made institutions. I did that earlier with organized religion, but I've done that with, pharmaceutical companies. I know it seems silly now. Our government, I mean, institutions that we should always trust that are all only and always about the truth. And so I thought to myself, if we think about reimagining the American dream, what if it's about how we can create more love in the world
Mm.
than how we can accumulate stuff? And I think we are very much a materialistic culture and society. I mean, most people don't kind of have a religion in this country. They can, some people consider themselves spiritual. I mean, I think it talks to how organized religion has lost just so many people. But to me, the crazy thing is that even if you don't subscribe to a particular religion, you're still a spiritual creature. And this idea of spirituality has been part of humanity since the beginning of time. So whether or not you were a shaman or a Jewish person wandering the desert, like this idea of God or spirituality is core to the human experience. And I think when we cut that out, there's something really not good that happens to us. So that was my way of like, maybe the American dream needs to be more focused on how we can love and support each other, not how much stuff I can get.
Oh, that's really a beautiful way of looking at it. And, you know, throughout your journey of creating this life of supporting others and love, I know you had to place a lot of trust in God. And I like how you talk about that. But tell me more about that. What has that been like for you?
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, I will confess, uh, in terms of just being honest with people, is that I struggle with trust in God. So it's okay to struggle. It's always okay to struggle. I think God recognizes that. God knows us way better than we know ourselves in some way. So just know that the struggle is okay, the doubt's okay. But for me, I know that God is always there. Even if I don't kind of recognize or can understand, I know God is there. And I also try and be an active partner in that relationship in terms of listening for clues, praying, reflecting, reading, asking why. I mean, all those I think are key to kind of our spiritual journey. And so I'm learning to trust God. God has taken care of me throughout my whole life. I've never fortunately wanted for many things, and so I'm going to do that. And as much anxiety as I'm filled with at times, I know anxiety is coming from a place of fear, and love is never about fear. So I just trying to trust.
Yeah, I like how you acknowledge that. I think what I'm hearing from you is that it's possible to trust in God and also have anxiety and doubts at the same time.
Yeah.
And I like that because I think, that's part of being human is like having those doubts, having that anxiety. But even though we have that, we can still move forward and have trust in God at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
think you're absolutely right, Matt. They're not mutually exclusive. What I will say is that I have 10 years ago, if I had done this, I would have been freaking out. So I have less anxiety in my life than I did before, for sure. But it's still there. Of course, I'm reinventing myself at 57.
yeah, so I want to hear more about both of those things, the anxiety piece too. I mean, this is so prevalent in our society, culture, and world today. I mean, how do you experience anxiety, and how do you cope with that?
Yeah. Gosh, it's just such great questions you're asking. So, um, I think part of what I recognize with my spiritual awakening is that not only is it about a culture that's about selling us stuff, reducing us to objects, to consumers only, when we are way more than that. Um, but it's also based on fear. And just look at, I don't care what news media you subscribe to, most of it is about fear driven. Most of it probably has a bias to it. And I think just recognizing that, I'm like, okay, um, I know it's there. And I do limit myself. Like, I don't, before I go to bed, I don't, watch news channels or go online and read the news and that. I before I go to bed, I spend some time on my spiritual health through prayer,
Right.
meditation, reading, um, and that makes all the difference in the world, because what I've come to understand is that everything in this world, if that's what you're holding on to, you're going to be an anxious person because you can't take it with you. We're all going to end up smoke at some point with things. But I know that that's not, for me, that's not the end. So if death doesn't have that power over me, because I believe love is so much more powerful than death, then it frees me to be like, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah, death is bad. I get it, but um, that's been overcome. Like, the love. And so if you can take that power away, and you know that the power is in the love that you have inside, it really helps you try and live a more centered and healthier life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with things you're saying. I think, like, I hear you saying reconnecting with that love inside. And then
Yep.
also another thing you said is having like a daily routine or
Yeah.
daily practice. And I also work as a psychologist and I treat people with anxiety. And the people who get better are the people who have some sort of daily practice. And the people who don't get better, they don't do those things. So I'm so glad you shared that. I mean, do you mind telling a little bit more about that? I mean, what's your daily practice like to connect with your spiritual self and
Sure.
deal with that very human emotion of anxiety?
Sure. So I'll tell you about a Don day. So I start my days in the morning, and the first thing I do is I take some time to read or meditate on some piece of literature. Um, then I will, once I've kind of centered myself, then I will actually look at the news. So the news comes after I do that,
Yeah,
because I still need to know
I
what's happening in
know.
the world here. Um, then I spend my mornings writing, and then I'll do stuff that I need to kind of do all the, well, the busy stuff, the administrative stuff that you need to do, like write a book proposal. Um, and then I'd like to spend some time, just reading or listening to other podcasts, things like that as well. But again, I'm deliberate in terms of what I listen to make sure it's filling me with positiveness with things. And one of the joys of living in Vegas, I did my time in the Midwest as well, is that is the weather. So
It's
I
nice.
try, and if I'm going to read, I go outside to do it, because we have the days here. And I will say, one of the things that's happened with the spiritual journey is this: I've had this reconnection with nature. I spent so much of my life in the city, on planes, like, a tree was like, I see it from a cab going by or something. And I'll say there's something about reconnecting with the outdoors that is spiritual in its own way as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing those. Just a little bit more about your daily practices. I think all of those are really, really powerful and helpful. So that's great. And also from a very like deeper, more existential stuff perspective, I want to come back to something that I thought I heard you say that you reinvented yourself at age 57. Did I hear that?
Yeah.
I mean, good for you. So, I mean, tell us a little bit more about that, and then also maybe share some advice for, there's people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s and 70s who are like, I feel so unfulfilled with my life.
Yeah.
Like, I have a good job, I have a good family, I make decent money, but I don't know, I'm not happy and I don't know how to find what makes me happy. So, what should I do? So I guess I know that's a lot, and but tell us Tell us about your transition, and then any
Right.
advice you might have for other people.
Yeah. It's a great question as well. I mean, and I know you've written some about this, but for me, what I learned was when I didn't attach my ego to stuff in this world, I attached it to my passion, to the love that I feel, my relationship with God. And it freaks me out sometimes when I still do this and I'm trying to reinvent myself. But because I'm not attached to the stuff of the world, I don't want to say it's not hard, but it's easier to let go of that. So right now we don't have a lot of income. Well, we don't have any income coming in. Um, so I'm kind of using. We went through our savings. I'm kind of using retirement, and one of the things is like, are we going to have to downsize or that? And I think 5 years ago, I would have been like all freaked out about that. But I'm like, it's just a house. I've lived in so many other places. Um, I have a roof over my head. It's not important to me that I have a three-car garage. And so when you think about your priorities, it definitely helps with it. The other thing is surround yourself with people that love you, that are supportive. Um, know that God is always there, even if it seems like it's not the case. Um, yeah. That's kind of where I'm at. But I have absolutely trust that this is the path I'm supposed to be on, and it will work itself out. I'm sure I will be fed. Clearly, that's not a problem. And clothed and have shelter. I don't know what all that will look like, but that's not it. The what For me, it's about following this passion now.
That's really wonderful. And I mean, I think that does speak to the trust that you have, which is really powerful. And you also mentioned another word, letting go. Some people consider that an actual technique where they take their life or their fear or their anxiety and they just let go of it or they surrender it. I mean, was that a formal like decision that you made, or is that just kind of happened naturally? Or is that a technique that you use?
Um, that for sure happened with kind of the spiritual awakening, where I was
Yeah.
just like, I cannot do this. I cannot control everything in I can't control much in my life. Um, I don't have to live up to these labels of what success looks like. I don't have to live up to these labels about how I should behave or how I should act. Like I need to, for me, I always start with myself. If what I'm doing, am I creating more love in the world? And if I am, then I know it's the right action. And when I talk about this idea of creating love, I do also want to be clear that it means first taking care of yourself. And I'm not talking about it in a selfish way, but there is truth to the old adage, you got to love yourself first before you can love others. I absolutely believe that. And I know that once I surrendered my heart and opened my heart up, I'm like, I started to take better care of myself in terms of boundaries, relationships, things like that. And there's just so much. There's so much that does not stress me out anymore with life because you realize it just doesn't matter in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
Really, it doesn't matter.
I mean, yeah, and again, you sound very just like happy and free. I mean, do you feel that happiness and freedom?
Yes, yeah, it's absolutely genuine and authentic in terms of what I feel and are coming across. I mean, after I had that kind of spiritual awakening, I mean, it's still an ongoing process, but there was one moment where my ego was just obliterated. It just came down to like
What do you mean?
I'm a child of God and I'm loved. Like that
Okay.
was all that mattered. All these other labels that I've given myself in terms of son or cat daddy or, pharmaceutical executive or, you know, it, yeah, it just, it did not matter.
That's really powerful. And I did along this way, did you receive any sort of signs or serendipities or synchronicities along the way that helped?
Yeah. That's again another great question, because I think it goes to this idea of trust and like how did I happen with it. So first of all, I'll just say that even when I know that I don't necessarily get an answer right away, it doesn't mean that God is not involved in the process, because I believe God is always there and part in the process. But part of it is also just being open and trusting my intuition and seeing those signs that happen with it. So um, for example, as I'm writing and getting started out, I had the opportunity to write a guest blog for someone else's website, yours, and it came in a perfect time because I was just like, is anything happening in my life? Am I getting any traction? And then this opportunity came up to write a blog for your website. And I was just like, okay, that's another sign that I'm on kind of the path that I need to be on. I've heard from people that I have not talked to in 20 years that have seen some of my writings and have connected with me. And I'm like, that's another sign,
Yeah.
because they're connecting with you because of they feel something in terms of what you write. So those signs are there. I wish I had a complete picture of how things will play themselves out, but that's trust and faith.
Well, no, it is really good timing. And yeah, I'm glad we connected and really is good timing for me too, because I had taken about a year off from doing any sort of interviews. And I think actually you came along at a good time, right when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start doing these interviews again. So this is really good divine timing. Um, and tell us what the people that you connected with who had seen your writing, what were they saying? What sort of responses were they giving to you?
I mean, a lot of my friends are in their 50s now with things, and I think spiritual awakenings happen at all times, and there's different phases with it. But I don't think it's uncommon for people who are in their 50s, who were raised in Gen X, which is it was a very like I think about my childhood and how I was raised, and that world just does not exist anymore. Where kids were like, "Go out and play. I'll see you later." And there were three TV stations in the house, and that was it. And so we all kind of had the shared kind of cultural, it was just a really different time. And so when I look back and I see all the things that are happening in this country, and then I think about my own life and how I spent my adult life marketing drugs, I just I was just like, is this really it? There's something more. I have to embrace the spiritual side that has always been there. And so I think a lot of people are going through similar circumstances that I am. I mean, their stories are obviously different, but this idea of not feeling of feeling empty, of trying to achieve labels, about trying to be perfect in everything that you do, that you think you can control your future and your retirement. You start having people who are close to you pass. I mean, it's a wake up time.
Yeah, it really is. And I think you're right. I think that is something that a lot of people can relate to, that search for more meaning, more
Yeah.
purpose, a spiritual connection, and really a chance to follow their passion. Something that everyone can relate to. And we've talked a little bit about your book, your memoir, Finding God in Vegas. I mean, what? Tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, what else? What is? I don't say what else is in there because that's a lot. But did we? Is there anything else in there that we didn't cover that you feel like is important for people to know?
Yeah. So I talked a little bit about, I felt like I was very kind of spiritual at one point in my life. I mean, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I spent a lot of summers camp counseling. I wanted to be in youth ministry. And then this is in the 80s. I realized that I'm attracted to men, so I'm gay. This was also during the time of AIDS was happening. So it was not the best of times, I'd say, to be gay, so to speak, or to come out publicly. And I was so involved with Boy Scouts and with church, I made the decision, like a good Midwesterner in some ways, I'll just bury this
Mm,
because I was so concerned with my reputation. Because
yeah.
I knew if I came out, I wouldn't have the opportunity for youth ministry. I would be kicked out of Boy Scouts at that time. I mean, for a teenager, this was my whole world and identity.
Mm,
So I just kind of hid myself in the closet. Um, and it was at that time I was just, then later on, I went to college, I was closeted and went to grad school, and I finally dealt with it. And I realized I can't chase reputation anymore. I have to love myself, accept who I am,
yeah.
and I know that God has made me who I'm supposed to be. So I think that's the other piece that I would say is that I had so many people tell me that who I am was wrong, was something I could not change about myself. And so the first lesson I learned is don't embrace other people's shame or fears.
Yeah.
Uh, you're exactly who God created you to be. And I absolutely believe that. So I had this, big struggle. I mean, it was tough, but I came out ahead. But I also realized at that time I was done with religion, like just done, even though I did get a master's in theology, but I wanted to teach. So then I came out, and that's when I was like, everything was about being gay and just having fun. I mean, I didn't date, socialize as a teenager in my 20s, so I was going to make up for all this lost time. And then I just really fell into a world of materialism, especially having a high paying job.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who find that they can relate to that and they can find that helpful. And I mean, you mentioned that struggle. What advice would you have for anyone else who might be struggling with their sexuality but still finds God and spirituality important to them?
Right. Well, first of all, please know there's a difference between religion and spirituality. Spirituality is about your relationship with God. Religion is a human made construct to maybe help facilitate that. But like a lot of things that we do as humans, it sometimes we fall short of what we need, and we make it about something that isn't about love. So I mean, that's the first thing. And then I would say someone who's struggling is um, know that you're loved and try and find people in your life that will accept and love you. And be, I mean, honesty as well. I mean, look, I hid being gay from my parents for a long time. Um, and I'm an adopted child as well. So when I came out, my parents, I mean, the biggest thing was all these lies and deceit and everything that had been created from this. And so that's why I think anything that you're doing that's creating deceit and lies, that's not about love. So try see if you can figure that out. But for my parents, the most disappointing thing was not at all that I was gay. I mean, we worked through that, but it was just that I didn't trust in their unconditional love that they had for me for this baby that
Oh,
they adopted. And I would say that's so the parallels with God are spot on that you are loved. You are just unconditionally loved.
well, yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, and I also appreciate you using the word God because I happen to like that word too. But it seems like some people, when they move from organized religion to
Yeah,
spirituality, they're almost afraid of that word. And
yeah,
I know, I mean, I'm not trying to preach, and you're not trying to preach, but I
right.
mean, I think it's also important to acknowledge, like, there is this supreme divine being who does love us and who is guiding us.
Yeah,
I mean, was it hard for you to, when you moved more from an organized religion to spirituality? I mean, was that hard for you to connect with God or use that word because of your experience with organized religion, or did it just feel like, nope, this is my home?
I'm only chuckling because it's interesting. When I was younger, it wasn't a problem for, I kind of came to the realization that there was this difference. I stopped organized religion, but then I also stopped taking care of my spiritual life as I went further down the rabbit hole, materialism with things. Plus, I surrounded with myself with people that were not about kind of a spirituality side to us, but only material with things. Since my coming out though, that's where it's been interesting in terms of how do I write about this? Because I'm like, was I born again? Was I reawakened? And it makes me a little uncomfortable, the language. But I'm like, I don't know how else to describe it, but that's my old self, my old ego, like trying to hold on to, I don't know, acceptable norms, or not people wanting to think that, because I believe in God, I must be a fool or something. Like, so it is interesting. I had to readjust and be comfortable again with language and talking about things. So
Yeah, well, it comes off very authentic and genuine. Doesn't sound like all high and mighty, and it doesn't sound disingenuous either. Um, and I mean, we have covered a lot today. I mean, is there any other topics either in your book or from your life that we have not talked about that you feel like is important for people to know about?
um well, I mean, I think the three things, and we've kind of covered a lot of them, but if I was kind of put a bow on it, so to speak, I don't know why I would want to put a bow on it, but nonetheless, one is this, just that you're loved, you're a child of God. There, who you are and created. There's nothing wrong with that, and don't let anyone else try and shame things, especially things you cannot change about yourself. Second of all, I feel like all our, at the end of the day, we think, okay, what is our purpose? Raising families, great, creating art is great, but for me, it's creating love, and that really is the legacy. I don't want, when I when that time comes, when I leave this world, I don't want my greatest accomplishment to be that I made a net profit of X dollars for the agency and
Yeah.
20 whatever. But there were more ways in terms of how I created love, because I helped a kid who was in the foster care system with things. And then the last piece I would say is that always ask why. That's going to be key to your spiritual journey. And asking why is also going to be key to helping you make sure that the tyranny that's not about love doesn't envelop your life.
So, okay, so I followed you 100% with the first two, but always ask why.
Yes.
Help me understand that. Tell me a little bit more what you mean by that. Because I'll be honest, there's some things that happen in this world, and I'm just like, I have no idea why this happened. And I mean, I'm like, okay, there's some reason, but I don't understand it. But I
Right.
mean, what do you mean? Always ask why? Like, I have not heard that.
Sure. So for me, I think there were two things that came out of it. One was just in terms of my awakening, all this blind faith and trust that I had in human institutions,
Okay,
of
okay,
our government,
okay,
of companies. So that
okay.
was part of, is like asking why. And usually, if something
Okay.
bad is attached to it, it goes back to money. But I
Okay.
think also in terms of just your spiritual journey, you know, I, I do ask God, like, God, why is this? Or, help me understand this, or what can I do here? And so I think asking why and questioning is always part of it. Like, I think to myself, am I
Okay.
really doing everything that I can to create love in the world?
Okay.
That's the part about asking why. Because
I see.
I think spirituality, as reassuring as it is, it can be a little uncomfortable at times. And I
Yeah,
think if you're about love, it should be uncomfortable at times.
it is. It is. And do you? do you always get an answer to that? Like you say, hey, God, why did this happen? Do you all, I mean,
No,
okay, good.
no, and I have to be
Yeah.
at peace with that,
Okay,
and I'm okay
yeah.
with that. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
yes, for
yeah.
sure.
So, yeah, because I mean, there's, so what would you say to people who, they ask God why something happens
Yeah,
and they don't get an answer and they're not at peace at that. And
sure.
whether it's, a death of a loved one or
Right,
a political event that really bothers them,
right,
or just something, and I mean, and they don't get an answer and they don't have any understanding. I mean, what would you say to them? And they're like, they're still trying to trust in God.
right. So I think it's very real. I think we all have doubts in our faith, moments of doubts. I mean, my goodness, if you want to look at a moment of doubt, I had 30 years worth of that with things. For me, it's the fact of, if you know that at the end of the day, the greatest power energy in the world is love, and love overcomes death even, then all this stuff is horrible and as difficult as it is, it's not the end.
Yeah,
It's not the end
yeah,
with things. And that, at least from my point of view, God is always with us, in our suffering as much as in our love. And so, kind of like when I talked about God being with me in the animal hospital when I had to say goodbye to my cat, like I know God was there. I don't know why, but it was time for this little cat to leave.
yeah,
But then I've also come to realize, um, we got another cat, and I was like, wow, my heart has so much love to give. Like, I will always miss and love that little cat, but I have room in my heart for another cat as well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we're
That
amazing creatures in some ways.
Yeah, that's I think that's so true. And yeah, thank you for clarifying that. That does help me understand. And you're right, that love that never dies and that
Right.
comes everything. So yeah, thank you for that. And your website, tell us a little bit more. First of all, what is the website? I'll write this in the write-up, but what
Sure.
is your website?
It's donaldharoldyoung.com. So it's DONALDHROLD Young. So it's old young. Anyway, okay. I guess I didn't find that clever. So people can go there. There's more writings, the blog posts. They can sign up for our newsletter. They can follow me on social media. I'm on all the channels, Instagram and X and Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you still can't find me, just send me an email. I'm at the point where I just love hearing with people because we do this stuff. I know you know what it's like. You do this stuff, and
Yeah.
you're like, well, where does it go? Does it make a
I
difference?
know,
So
I
yeah,
know. That's great. Well, then, I mean, if you want people to email you, what's your email address? Or if you don't want to share that, that's okay.
it's on the website. I think
Okay.
it's info at donaldharoldyoung.com.
Okay. All
It's
right.
all over the website.
All right. Well, we'll definitely keep the website up there. And your book, Finding God in Vegas, when does that come out?
I'm hoping it will maybe come out by the fall. I don't know. I gotta find a literary agent, and we're in the process of that right now. So
That's great. Well, again, thank you so much for connecting with us today. I mean, you shared a lot of wisdom and a lot of really just heartfelt stories. Like I can't help but just to feel that love that you described. So thank you for sharing that with us.
thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, again, everyone, this was Matt Welsh with Spiritual Media Blog, and today I had the honor talking with Donald Harold Young, author of Finding God in Vegas, Reimagining the American Dream. Thanks again so much for being here.
Thank you.